the Brew and Ink podcast. Welcome back, everyone, to another Brew and Ink podcast episode. I think this calls for a cheers.
Oh my gosh, it does.
Long time since we've been in person.
Yes.
We've been working on lots of things, rebranding type things, some brainstorming type things, and also figuring out how to do video and rearranging my studio. That's always fun.
Isn't that a song? Rearranging my studio.
It should be. If it's not, a country singer, someone needs to rearrange in my studio.
Is that a country song?
I don't know, but we are back to do what we are now affectionately calling a brew and review. We have our brew. I'm drinking on an IPA, home brewed, and Britt is drinking on an Irish Red. And as you can see, it's behind him is the dispenser where we get our lovely homebrew beer. 2 flavors on tap at all times. There's actually 2 more in there right now.
Now that's
fermenting.
a country song.
Yeah, 2 beers on tap.
2 flavors on tap.
At all times.
At all times.
But we've got a Hefeweizen that's brewing back there, fermenting, and then the other one is a mango milkshake IPA. So it's got lactose in it, get it nice and creamy, and it's got mango flavors, a lot of citrusy type hops.
Yeah?
It's going to be good.
That sounds good. I'll have to try it.
Yes. I won't have much because I was commissioned to brew that for someone, if you will. Yes. But other than that, I've been watching a lot of Marvel stuff, a lot of things on Netflix.
Man, I have too.
I mean, we didn't even get a chance to talk about No Way Home.
True. We didn't get to do a review on it.
Yeah. That, though, has been like one of my favorite. I don't know about you guys, but that's been one of my favorite Marvel movies, hands down.
Oh,
the way they tied everything together.
It's on par with basically anything that they've done. I mean, the way they put everything together.
Yeah.
And, I mean, to me, it had a couple hiccups. It was kind of convoluted how they get to the multiverse, like, hey, stop messing around while I'm trying to do this this spell, kid. You know, like, it was a little like,
you'd think he'd be a little more on top of what he was doing.
I think the master or whatever, Sorcerer Supreme would be whatever.
Well, now, he wasn't the Sorcerer Supreme. Remember, that's what made him different.
That's right.
Yeah.
But all I have to say is I totally agree. You know, it's one of those movies where people cheered in the theater.
Right.
And I think it was opening weekend. I think it was either opening weekend or the next that I saw it with the kids.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, people cheered and we had rewatched all 5 of the other Spider-Man. Yeah. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield.
Yeah.
And then the other Tom Holland ones.
Yep.
So we were in. We were all ready to go.
I had caught we did like a vacation and it was on TV, the second one that Andrew Garfield did, and it was on the background, and I was glued to it because I know it's coming out, and it really helped to remind me everything that happened between him and Gwen and that whole thing, and the way they tied up everyone's story, from each of the different Spider-Men in this one was great.
I think they did an amazing job balancing the nostalgia, the new character, giving all 3 Spider-Men an arc, even giving, MJ and the friend, I forget his name.
Ned. The guy in the chair.
Giving him a little bit of an arc.
Yeah.
And even Doctor Strange. I mean, they did a pretty good job overall, and it was just so epic. And I really would have loved to have been in the room, because I've seen a couple of interviews. I would have loved to have been in the room in almost every one of those conversations with those actors of hey, will you be in the Spider-Man movie?
Right.
Well, can I see the script?
No. Just trust us.
I mean, these are not small actors, and these, and they're not young anymore. They're, Tobey Maguire isn't a spring chicken anymore.
Right. And I love that they brought that up. Like,
Yeah.
oh, my back.
Yeah,
I can't get it. It hurts
So,
here.
anyway, I thought they did a very good job.
But we're not here to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. As much fun as it is.
As much fun as it is and was.
We are actually going to talk about Stranger Things Season 4.
Season 4.
Season 4. I like to call it Stranger Things Season 4 plus the movie.
Plus the 2 movies.
The 2 movies. Well, I didn't realize, because we kind of binged first 6 episodes, and then when I saw 7 and 8, I think it was 7 and 8 were the last 2, I was like, oh, wow, this one is an hour and a half, and then this one is 2.5 hours. Well, I went back, and
the other ones
were like all hour and 15 minute, hour and a half. So we were already doing like 3 episodes compared to, or like double. They basically doubled up the amount of time they did per episode.
Well, and they can get away with it.
Yeah.
Because they're Stranger Things. And we'll get into it. It definitely had some problems, but we'll get into some of that. But
it's not all good, folks.
At the same time, you go into the last 2 episodes thinking, oh my God, this is a movie.
How's they going to wrap this up? Yeah.
And then this is a 2-hour last episode.
Yeah.
But when you consider all the different storylines that they were telling.
Right.
And they did a good job with the scenes and doing something meaningful in one of the stories and then bringing that to a close or bringing that to some sort of stopping point.
Yeah.
And then when you go to the different storyline, you're like, oh yeah, the pizza guy. Like so by the time
I forgot about those guys.
So I thought the pacing overall was good.
Yeah.
For what it was.
There was a few parts. Oh. So like we rewatched all the way through again, except I have not finished the last episode. I still have like an hour left in the very last episode for the second time through. But what we did was, when the last 2 episodes came out, Giselle and I, we started at like 2 PM, and we said, let's just start over. Let's just binge it. But we skipped every scene with Hopper and like all the Russian scenes. Because all of that, and by the way, guys, this is very spoiler-filled.
Spoiler
We're
alert.
About to get into the nitty-gritties. So if you don't want to hear that, now would be the time to pause it. But just so we were like, the Russian stuff doesn't really have any meaning or context until that very last like part where he's fighting the Demogorgon, and then they start kind of taking over.
Okay,
that
so here's my hot take. You want to know my hot take?
Yes.
Hot take. We need like a sound effect.
Soundboard next.
Here's my hot take. I think they found some prison in Georgia,
right?
That they could film that they could get for cheap,
right? Yeah,
and they're like, let's go back to the prison in this episode.
My goodness. Okay, so that was my biggest gripe with the thing, was like the Hopper scenes were just kind of, they felt disjointed.
They did.
I wanted to see what was happening with Hopper, and then they were going out to rescue him, and you're like, yes, he's getting rescued, he's escaping, and then no, they got caught. Oh no, they're going back to the prison. Okay. Now I feel like all that time we spent with them beforehand was just kind of wasted. And
here's my hot take number 2. So my first hot take is, because I think it was filmed in Georgia. A lot of that Netflix stuff is.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it was filmed in Georgia.
They had 3 locations. I think one was like Mexico, one was Georgia, and then I think there was another.
Well, the Las Vegas stuff or whatever was probably wherever that. Wherever. But my hot take number 2 is, because, and it's connected, maybe it's 1B or something. But the second part of the hot take is, not only did they find this set piece that they thought, we have to film here.
Right.
Like, this is, because for those of you guys who don't know, basically what happened was like, they go out searching for locations. So like when they're filming a show or a movie, they're like, where can we, like, that's a huge part of doing a movie.
That's someone's job.
And then they're like, well, wait a minute. We don't have enough story for 8 episodes.
Right, to continue them stretched out.
Like, all we have is he's stuck in the Russian prison, which they kind of set up at the end of season 3.
Right.
You know, the little hint
That,
or
and
whatever.
that was what was disappointing. Was like that was the big like
After
teaser.
credit scene.
Yeah, that was the big teaser.
Whatever it was, yeah.
him in Russia, and then I felt like it was all kind of thrown away.
And
Not all, but
I think they drug it out.
Yeah, they dragged it out.
I think they drug it out. I think it, like, where were they going to send him if he escaped?
right.
Like, I think, like, because the whole idea was obviously he's in the prison because it was connected to the Upside Down,
Right.
or one of the portals or whatever. So they wanted to do something climactic.
There within that area,
But all the other storylines, with the possible exception of the pizza dude and them driving across country,
right.
how do they have money?
Right.
And the dude just gets to take the pizza van. Like, is it his van or does it?
I guess he's the owner, manager.
Does the pizza place, and like, how many pizza places?
It was franchised. They ran into another one. They went to a different one.
Which was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, there were some problems here and there with the other ones, but those storylines. But I think they had the basic idea of what they wanted to do in the Russian prison, and they knew they couldn't get far away from it,
right?
Because like they wanted to have some sort of. I kind of like the idea where the climax was. They weren't all in the same place.
Right.
But they were each in different places, and they
were crossing paths, kind of like where they were
helping each other.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like they were all in the mall or they were all in the whatever. Like, they spread it out all over the world, really.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
That they kind of built on some of that stuff. But that's what I think. I just don't think they had enough story to do in the prison.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And so they just had to come up with stuff. Oh, he's going to escape. Oh, no. And he breaks his ankle, and it just doesn't seem to hurt him the rest.
After that. Yeah. They kept going on about the ankle thing, and then I was like, so did he break his ankle? What happened? Like, he kind of gouged it to get it out to the little cuff.
The dude broke his ankle with a sledgehammer.
And then he's running on it.
And he's just running on
He
it?
jumps up the little shack thing, and So there was that.
I am an odd person.
An odd duck.
And so I don't have the same experience as a lot of people in the 80s. I did live in the 80s. So for me, there is a lot of nostalgia with what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I know there was a trope in a lot of those 80s movies of bullying and picking on the weird kid and all that sort of stuff. But, like, it went so over the top.
Right.
That I was
in the roller rink.
I was like, no one would have been her friend. No one. Like, in my school, and we had cliques and we had the popular people.
Yeah.
And
everyone
we had
would be like,
some
don't
jerks.
talk to that girl. She's
was
mean.
Like, just throws some
Milkshake.
girls,
Yeah.
like, no, her.
The project.
Her
yeah,
project, just, and like, dude,
and
people at my school would have, like, not even her friends would have been like, we're going to kick your butt just for that. Like, like, I just don't, it was so over the top.
Yeah. And then she was able to convince her friends that Elle was the one that was the tattletale when she clearly didn't. Like, they all saw she didn't rat them out. The teacher knew that it wasn't hard to figure out. The teacher's looking at the project, looking at the girl crying, looking at the girl that's always giving her trouble, and like, okay, two and two together.
I feel like there were several of those story points that they drug out.
Yeah.
Because, so while the pacing overall was good, but they had to drag some of this stuff out because what's her name is going from going to Alaska and then going to they had to draw out time
like,
and then the guys are going to have to drive the van all the way across the country, and so all that sort of stuff.
Fun fact about the airplane ride where Joyce was going over. You see this guy right here?
I do, somewhat.
So this guy, and you probably can't see it very well, but he used to work at the place where I was working, and he signed up as an extra to be on this series, or not the series, but he was in that episode. He was sitting right in front of Joyce on the airplane. So as they're panning by, he's the one that's like puffing a cigarette and there's smoke everywhere, and then she's right behind him.
Yeah, cool.
And we're like, hey, I know that guy.
Nice.
Fun fact.
And I kind of feel that way about the whole, like, Mike not wanting, well, I'm just a normal person and she's a superhero. Like, there was just some of it that was like, they're just trying to create conflict.
Yeah, like Will and Mike having their...
the whole Will thing, I think, had a sort of an agenda behind it more than it was like a real story problem.
Yeah.
Like, it was more of like, I'm different, and so he's going to cry about it a lot. And I'm just like, dude, like, that doesn't like make me like you.
Right. Yeah. We're like, we liked Will when he was the one that was fighting against odds and like figuring out, like, he's tormented.
Right.
Because he's tormented
like,
by like upside down stuff.
And I'm trying to remember, what did Will even do in this season 4 besides sit around and whine?
He painted a picture of them fighting a dragon, and then held on to it for like cross country. I don't know. He brought it with him. Like, he had it when he went to the airport, and Mike was like, "What's that?" And he's like, "Oh, nothing." And then like doesn't show anyone.
He had to grab it leaving.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did in one way, I did kind of like the. I'll get to what I really like.
Yes, there's plenty that we really like, guys. Trust us. Stick with us.
the element of the different factions of the government.
Yes, working against each other. Because that's. Obviously, they did it more in a Hollywood way, but that's legit. Like, that would happen. Like, if you had a person who could do what Elle can do, and
it
was also a trope from 80s movies.
Oh, sure. That's good, too. Yeah. Oh, and they did some great tropes, filling in. It's just little markers here and there, just little things. And they do such a great job coming up with that stuff and being timely for, it was supposed to be 1986 in this year, so they were timely to 1986, and they really do their homework and a lot of that stuff. So a lot of that was great. The kids are a little older, and so they're a little more awkward. They're not as cute,
right?
They're a little more awkward, and it's fine. But I thought that was interesting. And I thought it was interesting that she had lost her powers, and how do you get it back? And like, she had to unlock this memory. Yeah. And that was a part of figuring out who Vecna was.
I really liked how they tied in where that memory went. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But I want to start with the first thing that I really liked that stuck out to me. It's very first episode, towards the end of that episode, when they did the back and forth, the cutaway play between the Hellfire Club and then Lucas on the basketball team.
That was great.
And his sister kind of filling in his spot.
Yes.
And it going back and forth between his shooting, like that last second, when her rolling that natural 20 on that last possible roll that they could do to win.
Hit the winning
and
shot.
He hit the winning shot. And it was like the way they tied that together with the D&D and the popular like basketball team.
Hot take number 3.
Boom.
That's probably one of the top 3 moments of the whole show.
Yes, the whole show.
Like, I'm talking about Stranger Things, all 4 seasons.
Yes.
Like, it was so well done. I totally agree with you.
Yes. Yeah. And while we're on the topic of, like, favorite scenes, I would say scene number 2 that was, for me, probably the best takeaway was Max at the graveyard.
Yes.
When she's run up the hill and they're like, the song "Run Up the Hill." Like,
it was late at night. I was wide awake.
Ooh,
I was so in.
So good.
And they did a good job with Max in season 3.
Yes.
And so that care and relatability kind of comes back.
Yes.
In the next season.
I was so happy that they highlighted that whole her grappling with her losing her brother.
Yes. But like, she didn't like her brother. Her brother was abusive, but like,
she was glad to be rid of him, and she felt guilty for that. She had survivor's guilt, but she also had guilt because she was like sort of relieved.
Well, and here's this is really good writing. This is an example of really
Yes.
good writing because they take who was basically a villain in season 3 and give him a hero moment at the
Yes.
end of season 3, which was a great turn. That's a twist.
Yeah.
That's a great turn and twist. And now, like, he gives his life for her, basically, or
Yes.
gives his life for people. And then, so now she has to deal with the emotions of that. And that is a valid conflict that you can draw out.
Yes.
And then they
And you can
connected
relate
that,
to.
and you can relate to. And then they connected that with how Vecna targets her.
Yes.
And how they kind of gave you the hints that she had the headaches and she was going to the counselor and like
Yeah.
then the sort of surprise that she was
Oh shoot, she's next.
and
And the
ahead.
fact that they took this random song, like I was trying to remember, I was like, did I ever hear this song in the 80s? I don't know.
If
was like,
I
was
did,
it,
I don't remember.
Was it a popular song in
It was not-
'86
it was
in
not
that
a
year?
popular song.
But when I started listening to it, and what's funny is it shot this the lady, what's her name? Oh my goodness, I had it top of my head. But the lady that does the song, it shot her
Kate
up.
Bush.
Kate Bush shot Kate Bush up to #1 on the charts.
Dude,
Like,
she's making millions now.
Yes, because they added her
Because
song.
Well, because it was so long ago and it wasn't a hit.
Right.
So she has all the rights to it. She
Yes.
has all the publishing and songwriting.
Yep.
She has all the rights to it.
Yeah.
100%. And so, like, how many people bought that song, just the song,
Yeah.
off of iTunes or Apple
Just to listen
Music
to it
or
over and over
whatever,
again.
Just like Amazon Music or whatever, just
Yeah.
to listen to it. And not to mention whatever money she got that they just for them including it. And they probably
yeah.
got this. They probably got the song for a steal just to include it in the like. So
Right.
she was already a win. Like, oh,
Yeah, put it in there.
like this
Pay me
song
this
wasn't
much.
even a hit, and now you're going to pay me this much money
Yeah.
just to have it. Oh, for sure. And it's not Thriller or something that they would have to pay an arm and a leg,
Right.
You know.
But
What
it
a
was
great
really
story.
good. If you go and listen to the song, which I'm sure all of us have over and over again this summer, it really, for me, I started going, oh man, this is like, I can see why they would pick this song for
Yeah.
Max, because it talks about like, if I could make a deal with God and change our places, and go through the struggle that you went through. Like and it goes into that whole like she's wishing that she could have done something for her brother or been the one that died instead or dies now. Like she talks about like she wished something bad would happen to her, but like the song goes through like kind of that whole like if I could change places, if I could switch places, and I was like, oh man, that really is
That was so
something that
good.
she'd probably listen to.
Well, and just to kind of go all the way through it, like that scene is probably that was the scene along with the basketball, along with the
Yeah.
D&D
D&D.
game, but that scene with her, that is when I was fully invested in the show.
Yes,
In-
that was the
in
scene that
season.
made me want to go back and rewatch just that
That
season.
was a scene that made me go, holy crap, this is what I've been looking for.
Yes.
This is why I'm watching this show. And her whole storyline from the first episode to the last.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of it centers around her.
Yeah.
And her arc. And I thought, and what a great idea, because not that you shouldn't center on Mike and Elle, but like she's a newer character, so they can take more time with her and explore that character
and
more.
we're all going to appreciate that as viewers.
And then because we know the other characters
Yeah.
well, and they can just use the other characters.
yeah.
And I like the arc that they had with Lucas. Like the whole he's an African American, so obviously he should be on the basketball team in a small town.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, in the '80s, that is real.
Right.
That was real. If you were black, you had coaches saying, "You're going to be on the basketball team, right?" I'm just telling you.
Especially in small towns.
I'm not saying it was right. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, in fact, it probably wasn't right, but that was definitely the idea, you
Yeah.
know. And that happened in my school, and like people looked at the black kids as weird if they weren't
a part of
if they weren't on one of the sports teams,
Right.
If not all three of the main sports teams. I'm just saying, and so I actually really liked that they explored that. And he was like, "Look," And so his arc was, this is who I am, because he was trying to hide being in the Hellfire Club and the whole thing.
Well, he even comes out and says it to the guys. He's like, guys, just let me get through this game, this championship game, and then we'll all be in. I'll be in the popular crowd.
Right,
you
yeah,
guys
yeah,
will be
yeah.
there too. And
that's a very 80s trope, to be
Yeah.
popular. What are you going to do to be popular? There
Yep.
were movies around. What does it mean to, all that stuff. So
Yep.
very good. Very cool. But the whole Max thing I loved, and how they really played with that. And I know I have friends who did not like the ending with Max. I loved the ending with Max.
Yes.
Because I think it gives a lot of possibilities moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think there had to be a loss.
There had to be
I
loss.
I think Elle losing at the end was the perfect. But she didn't completely lose. But
Right.
She lost enough.
she lost enough, and now it's torturing her.
And now that just generates more conflict.
And what they did well was they didn't telegraph it to who exactly it would be. Because Giselle and I, by the last episode, we were like, "Oh, it's going to be Steve," because they keep talking about giving him scenes with his kind of love triangles going on, and then we're like, "Oh no, it's going to be this girl because she's."
the main girl who's like the reporter girl, what's her name? I forget. I don't have my notes or anything.
Yeah,
I forget her.
oh my
The really
goodness.
thin girl.
Yeah.
Because there was that one moment where she goes into the Upside Down with Vecna, and he's like, "What are you doing?"
Right.
Which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Like that was really, really cool. And so they kind of played around with maybe putting her in danger.
Yes.
And they put a lot of the characters in danger in a new way, and they explored the Upside Down in a new way.
Yes.
There was a lot of things that they did that I thought were very creative and very good.
Yeah, well, like they had Steve talking to her about his like dream of like, oh, I want to own a Winnebago and have 6
That was
kids,
great.
and I always saw you there with me, and I was like, oh God, he's gonna die. He's
Oh yeah. Okay, so here's one of my main criticisms of the show. Along with the Russian stuff, which everyone that I've talked with, they all hate the Russian stuff.
Yeah.
Because even if you're not a writer, you're like, what are they do? Like, what are they doing?
Well, for Giselle, it was the hyper violence of it because it was always torture or getting your ankle broken with a sledgehammer.
But then you're
all
okay.
those all those scenes were
Okay, the other part that I thought was not done well was they had this whole conflict throughout the whole 8 episodes, which were like an hour and a half each, and they had these little conversations. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to tell her that I'm going to a different
school.
Jonathan, and then
yeah.
and Jonathan's like, I'm not going. I was supposed to go there, but now I'm not. And like, there's this whole thing, like this conflict of, are they still together? And now she's liking Steve,
Right?
and it was not resolved at all.
It was not resolved.
There was no resolution.
kind
And
of
I'm
like, what?
are we good? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, that's it.
You're not gonna
Talk. That's not like, Jonathan, what the crap? You were supposed to come here. And she's like, well, I'm glad you weren't here because you really... And I get that.
Right.
But I was like there's not like a little moment of, but I really want to be... I think I want to be with Steve or something. And maybe they're going to explore that in the final season or something. But
Jonathan's involvement was almost a throwaway. He had a couple.
He was.
He was the one that brought in the pizza dude, and that was like the main transportation. And he was the one that came up with the solution for Elle to be able to do the saline liquid in the pizza dough freezer.
the pizza guy was.
Yeah, the pizza guy, and he came through Jonathan because they were best friends, smoking. They were smoking dope the whole time.
And I thought it was a good group.
Yeah.
You had enough of different personalities, and I actually really did like the moment, even though Will was a little too whiny for me, even in that moment.
Yeah.
There was a great little moment
Between him and Jonathan.
Yeah, there was a great moment between him and Jonathan where he's like, I know we haven't got a chance.
He's like, remember that time you had that Lego man stuck up your nose?
Yeah, it was a great little scene.
He's like, you used to come to
little
me with your problems. He's like, I don't feel like you do that anymore.
Right.
And then they both kind of break down and embrace, and it was good. It was a good scene.
It was a good scene.
That was probably the best scene for those two characters.
Yeah, as much as they dealt with it,
Yeah.
for them to not resolve it,
Right.
was a problem. So there was a lot of it that was good. I thought the fact that they were able to bring out this whole other aspect of how she had to deal with one who was who ended up being Vecna, and they had his real name. I forget his real name. Oh, you know what was really cool was when they went into the prison, and it was Freddy Krueger.
Yes.
Who was the
blind guy?
With the blind guy
that survived
who was the dad.
Vecna's. Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah, his son was Vecna.
So that whole story with who Vecna is and him, and then connecting that with,
And-
that's how the upside down portal was first opened by Elle, and they
Yeah.
did that without I don't think they contradicted anything that came before.
I don't think so either. They did a great job of tying all that in, because we kept saying when they were going to those flashbacks when she was inside Nina, the machine, and going through her flashbacks, we kept going, well, she's having conflict with 2, but they haven't told us who 1 is. And it was about that time that Giselle and I were like, my wife and I were like, it's got to be that guy that keeps investing in her and talking to her. And then lo and behold, it does. But I didn't foresee the whole her fighting him is what originally made the first tear into the upside down dimension.
Right.
And I was like, ooh, I like
that was cool, because it's they're kind of setting up a little bit of an escalation, and they've done that. They've been doing that in the show.
Yeah.
But I thought this was a great escalation, and diving more into Elle's character, and then figuring that out meant that she kind of rediscovers her powers. I mean, there was there was a lot of that. It was not complicated, but there were a lot of pieces to that.
Yeah.
That for them to make it work, I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, and that was where they left a cliffhanger, sort of, was at the end of her realizing that it was Vecna. That's where they left it for like a month before the last 2 episodes came off. So it was a great cliffhanger.
Yeah, it was a good cliffhanger.
The way that they tied that in to almost the previous seasons, like people are going back and going, oh man, there were grandfather clock sounds when Will was in the upside down, and then there was the creature that looked like Vecna that he ran into in the upside down. And the way that he survived Will, and when he was first in there, was he was singing his favorite song. Like all
I
this
didn't put
stuff.
all that together.
Yeah, well,
That's
I
cool.
didn't either. That's the stuff that was like, social media, the internet puts that all together for you.
Fans can figure that out. Yeah.
And then even with the lady that was the therapist, if we had been paying attention in the second scene, I think it's the second scene she's in with Max, her necklace is a grandfather clock.
Oh.
And so it was like giving us nice little hints that when you go back and watch it the second time, you're like, oh, they were feeding us information the whole time, and we didn't even know. It was like background kind of information.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And again, I obviously that was part of the goal, is that they get Joyce and Hopper together.
Yeah.
Finally. And there was a couple nice moments when they finally get together and go back. We're going back into the Russian prison.
And we knew exactly what was going to happen. We're like, it's not just one Demogorgon. It's going to be all those Demogorgons that they walk by.
Right.
And then she was, and that's where they had seen the particles, like where she kept talking about those live particles, and that was
they had the some sort of living particles thing, the dark thing, in one of the cases.
Yeah.
It was kind of okay. We know it's going to happen.
It was nice for them. They were able to bring back like every single kind of beastie they'd fought in the previous, the Demodog and the Demogorgon, and then a couple different versions of those. And you got to see him go in with a big old flamethrower. It's very 80s trope as well.
Very 80s. And okay, so I liked what they did. I forget his name. Larry? What was the guy's name that goes with Joyce?
Yes.
And he's
a black belt.
They did an interesting job, like kind of making it like it was goofy that he was practicing karate.
Right.
Which again, Karate Kid, like karate became this big thing.
Yep.
American Ninja and like those cheesy ninja movies that were coming out in the 80s. And so it worked. But they kind of made it like it was goofy, but it was a nice twist that he actually is a black belt.
Right, he was actually able to use it.
He's actually able to use it. So that was one of those tropes from the '80s, and they bring it in, and it just worked. And I dug how I did like some of those moments. His character kind of using his skills to like help Joyce and figure it out, and all of that.
Yeah, I like that they tied him back in again.
They tied him back in, and I like the guard actually. I mean, it's not that I didn't like the characters, but again, I just think they drug it out.
Yeah,
but
Enzo.
But the highlight, other than Max, come on, we all know the highlight, right? Is Eddie.
Eddie, oh my
he
goodness.
He was the highlight.
The best scene, or the most metal scene out of any of the Netflix.
The third best scene of
Stranger Things.
Of this season was him playing Master of Puppets. Was the most epic things. But you know, something that Stranger Things does a good job with, because they did it with, I think they did it with Steve originally. Is they take a character that you think is going to be a villain or unlikable, and they humanize them, and they turn them around a little bit. Yeah. And they do some nice twists with that. And they did it to an extreme with, what's his name, Billy or whoever it was that died in 3. But with Eddie, like, you're like, no one, we're not gonna like this guy. And then like they start to humanize him.
They buddy him up.
Well, but even before that, when the girl comes to him to buy drugs, and you start to see a softer side of him, right? Because at first he's like, "What are you doing here?" And then you can kind of see, like, when he tells her she's actually going through something, he starts to try to connect with her on a very human level. Yes, and it's just the little pieces that they would show with him. Yeah, and so I thought the Eddie character was such a great job, and then they stayed true to Dustin's character. Yes, because Dustin does the same thing with Eddie that he did with Steve. Yes, is bring that with his relationship and his just not giving up, unrelenting love, basically. I know that's kind of a weird way to say it, but that's really what Dustin does.
His childhood, his childlike ways. And they even say, Eddie comes and goes, "Don't ever change." After Dustin makes a very corny joke about going into battle because they're going to fight a bunch of bats, and he's like, "Don't ever change, man." And then that's when you're like, "Oh shoot, he's going to die." And then he does. He has his moment where he's like, "I'm not running away anymore." He has the flashbacks of like,
because he ran away early. Like, his arc was phenomenal. Yeah, and they made it fun. Yeah, and then they connected it to another trope, because I know it may have seemed weird to people if you didn't grow up in the '80s, but it was legit. Like, Dungeons and Dragons was considered a demonic, devil worshipping thing.
Yeah, people thought you were like really being
and it wasn't
changed.
Everybody, but there was definitely that minority of Christian conservatives who were very fearful of satanic influence on music and on games and on books and on movies, and it was just there. It was a definite part of growing up. If you were a church-going person in the '80s, it was a definite part of what you were going to see and deal with, is people who felt this way.
I remember not playing D&D when I was, middle school, high school, because of the way that it had been painted kind of as I was growing up. Like, I was like, this seems pretty cool. Like, why wouldn't I want to make a character and then like act it out with people as we go on this adventure and whatnot? And
well, a part of it was the whole,
because there are deities and there's you can get into
part of that rise of fundamentalism in the United States specifically. Yeah, as a more of a reaction than a real positive thing. And what ended up happening was that even stuff like C.S. Lewis or Lord of the Rings would be seen. Like, even though these guys were Christian and there's all sorts of Christian themes within their work,
Yeah.
like even those guys were kind of looked at askance because of the magic or the stuff that they had in them. And so yeah, so there was that whole stuff, but
they used that well.
But they used it well, and
with the jocks, because we haven't even talked about
I didn't like the jocks,
how they screwed everything up.
Like the jocks were not interesting characters to me. The jocks were like they weren't even interesting villains.
Right.
They were a little two-dimensional.
Yes.
And it was they just were like this foil.
Right.
Out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, oh, we're just gonna whatever. Like, they're just gonna show up when we need to give them an obstacle or whatever.
We're gonna have high school jocks beat up a little girl. Who was she? Lucas' sister. Was she still in middle school?
I think she was in middle school.
Yeah.
And they're beating this kid up.
Yeah.
And
then he comes in to fight Lucas, and of course steps on the tape player that they needed for Max. Like, he shows up just as she's going into this trance, and we're all watching, going, no.
Well, okay. Here's what I thought they were going to do.
Yeah.
And I was surprised when they didn't do it. Again, I liked that there was a loss, and even though she didn't die,
right,
I liked what they did in the sense of the fact that she was hurt and all that.
Yeah.
But I thought Lucas was going to start singing the song.
Oh, yeah.
I thought he was going to, like, when he broke it, I was like, well, they've only heard that song 50 billion times.
Right, he knows it.
Like, why doesn't he start singing it?
Like the way they did in season 2 or season 3 with the Never Ending Story, where they were singing it together.
Yeah.
Remember? That was like the big, like, I thought they were going to do something very similar to that again.
I thought that there was going to be a singing.
Yeah.
Like, that's how they were going to pull her out.
Yeah.
But and let's just say, by the way, it was one of the more gruesome. It was the most gruesome season by far, in
Watching
my opinion. I mean, like, that was not
eyeballs.
That was not. That was not like. It was like, ooh, that was cringeworthy. Like, it was like, ew. Like, But again, that's part of the escalation. Like, when that's what your show is built on, some of that fear stuff and that horror stuff,
And you know how you can tell that jock was kind of, and I don't even remember his name. I know his girlfriend's name was Chrissy, and that's why he was on the warpath, because Chrissy was the first one to go. But you could tell that he was a throwaway character because they didn't really wrap him up. They Lucas knocked him out, and he was laying on the ground there in that room.
And he just dies.
And then all the portals open. And as it's opening, it just kind of goes through his body, and he just sort of disintegrates. And, like, if you're not watching, like, if you blinked at that time, if you looked away to drink water, you missed it.
Yeah.
I had to go back and show my wife, like,
oh no, they
just
killed that dude.
Yeah,
like a main character for the
like he was knocked
4.
out, and he kind of like woke up just enough to be like, oh god, and then he's dead.
Yeah,
total toss away.
By the way, I do really like the fact that the season ends with all those portals being open.
Yeah.
Like,
taking the stakes to the next level. Because
I think there were changes and consequences in every season.
Yeah.
But every season was almost, season 3 not as much, but at least 1 and 2 there was like we'll just go back to being kids next year.
No, this was very much a scenario.
This was very much a, yes, you beat Vecna.
Yeah.
But he still won.
Yeah.
And he says that. Like, you don't realize I already won.
Yeah.
Like, this is over. And so even though she gets her powers back, she still pretty much loses. And
even though she kind of saves Max, like, Max isn't dead, but she also loses her.
She loses Max, who was, and I thought they did a great job with flashbacks showing that, like, this was her first real girl friend, like, female friend, and so there was a lot of that I think was well done, and so I liked how it ended. Because we all know there's going to be a 5th season. That's kind of like,
and I'm okay with that. With what they did with the season,
Empire Strikes Back it, in my opinion. The Empire Strikes Back it, which is, this isn't the end. We're going to end on a dark note.
Yes,
because
Max is locked in carbonite.
So Max is in carbonite.
Yes.
And she's frozen, but she's in a coma, and it's just kind of sad when Elle is going into the mind and trying to find her and can't find
she's
her.
not there, yeah.
But I mean, obviously we know, but that opens up possibilities. I think for season 5, maybe she is somewhere. And that allows them to bring that in a creative way. So that's why I like the ending, because they made us care about her legitimately.
Yes.
It wasn't like I said, a couple of the storylines were convoluted about, well, I was going to go to her place for spring break, and I might just go to a junior college, man. And I'm just like, okay, come on.
Right.
But that was a legitimate conflict within her, emotional conflict and moral conflict.
Yeah.
And so that really brought us into her character.
And they did a good job of having her vocalize it too.
Yeah.
Like when she was talking to Vecna, she was talking about how she wished something bad would happen to her. And yes, she did a little bit have that remorse or regret of almost feeling relief at the loss of her brother. And they did a good job of taking us through that whole arc that she went through.
Yeah.
And so even at the end, when she was already that one scene where she's lifting up and the first time that they kind of pull her out of Vecna's clutches and all that, you're like you've gone up with her and you've gone down, you got up and down, and then to have her left at this broken point at the end where you saw her just broken, literally, limbs and everything, and you're just left there going, oh man, what's gonna happen? And you're like, I gotta watch that again.
Yeah, right. So the whole thing with Eddie, it was a great arc, and we're not alone.
I didn't run away this time.
It was great, and Dustin is. Oh, and this another part that I liked was where they end up going to that girl's house who helped them.
Yes,
the computer genius
Dustin's girlfriend,
but she was homeschooled, or they're super. But they didn't make them crazy Christian weird.
Right.
They just made them Christian weird in a very interesting way. And the kids are putting on a show in the living room or whatever. They're making their little movies, and they each were doing all these really interesting things.
Yeah.
But weird.
And she's talking about IP address hacking in the 80s, and people are like, IP? What's an IP address? Can you print it? She's like, no, my skills end at hacking IP addresses. She's like, yes, I can print it.
And then having to get her dad's computer, and it was just kind of an interesting little side quest.
Yeah.
Because they did have to figure, it was a necessary one because they had to figure out where Elle was.
But it was good too because they brought back a character that was integral in season 3, and they didn't just do away with her, forget about her for season 4. I liked that they brought her back in, even though it was small. And again, it was Elle doesn't have her power, so Dustin's girlfriend's going to save the day. It's she's kind of the backup.
Yeah. So and Dustin was kind of himself. He had his role. Mm-hmm. I like how they brought in Lucas's sister more.
Yes.
And
Erica. You can't spell America without Erica.
And some of the parents, I thought, had some interesting moments, too. And, so I thought overall it was very entertaining and very good. And I definitely had some issues with it, but I really did enjoy it. I really did enjoy it.
It was like a 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. I'd
probably get a 7.5.
7.5, yeah.
I think 8 only because of Eddie playing Masters of Puppets.
Oh my goodness.
That moment was
the red lightning on top of the trailer.
You just earned that. You earned that moment.
Yes.
For sure.
Did you know the girl that was working with Steve, what's her name, with the freckles?
I don't remember.
Do you know she's the daughter of Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman?
No, I did not.
I didn't either until.
Did not know that.
Yeah, you start.
That's trivia. That's trivia moment.
Trivia moment. You
Trivia
learned
moment
something
for
now.
The kids.
But yeah, so for me again, I think 8 out of 10 because there were some slow parts. You could when we rewatched it, you really could skip a lot of the Hopper stuff and still
it didn't matter.
End up kind of where you knew what was happening. But Man, I was blown away. I love that they did another one on the July 4th kind of season because it was kind of it was good for me and my wife and her brother and his wife. We all watched that season 3 when it came out on July 4th.
Okay.
2 years ago, and so like we kind of were able to relive that feeling of like the summertime. And so I'm wondering, like, when are they going to do the next one? They've done Halloween. I think season 1 was more like Thanksgiving or Christmas.
I don't remember.
It was like Thanksgiving or Christmas, and
because
then
of the lights. Was it Christmas because of the
yeah,
lights?
yeah. So it was like Christmas, and then it's like Christmas, New Year's, I think.
Okay.
And then season 2 was Halloween, and then season 3 was 4th of July.
Okay. This one was spring break.
And then this one was spring break, but then they did re-release it again on like the last 2 episodes were 4th of July, well, beginning of July. So we were watching it on the 4th of July holiday. But we'd love to know what you guys think, our faithful listeners. Did you enjoy it? Have you watched it? I'm hoping you have, or we just told you everything that's happened.
Spoiler. Okay, so I shared a meme on my Instagram page that says Master of Puppets was released March 3rd, 1986.
Okay.
Stranger Things 4 takes place during spring break 1986, typically mid-March or early April.
Yeah.
So Eddie Munson, between week-long sessions of D&D, school, and his side hustle,
how to play
had
this.
2 weeks to learn the title track without tabs or the internet.
Right.
I'm like, thank
And he
you.
pulled it off.
And he pulled it. Like, and it was just, but no, I've loved Stranger Things. I mean, it's obviously very popular, which is why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
But I have loved it for all the same reasons a lot of people do, but I'm looking forward to season 5. I think here's why I like the way they ended it. It made season 5 is not going to be superfluous now.
Right.
Like there has to be a season 5.
Right.
Like you can't not have a season 5,
Yeah.
which is great. Which is again is good writing. It makes you want to watch it. You know.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, I think with all that to say, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it doesn't, I mean, it probably will be 2 years, but, and the kids will be that much older and we'll have other kind of new issues to deal with as they keep growing up. But it was great.
I think Mike will
enjoyed it.
look less goofy at all, or just
No,
keep getting
he
more
keeps-
and more goofy.
Yeah, I think he's going to keep getting more and more goofy. Maybe they'll tie in his character from Ghostbusters into, he comes out with the backpack. He's, I know how to take care of the mind flayer. Cross the streams. No. But until next time, guys, we loved having you out again. Let us know if you in the comments or go to our Facebook page, our Twitter, follow us on Instagram, or even check us out on Discord. You can come and chat with us on there. We've got a couple different channels where you could just leave some messages, and we'd love to interact with you there. Tell us what you thought about Season 4 of Stranger Things. Tell us what you thought about this episode and our hot takes. There was at least 3 of them. Hot takes. But as always, until next time, raise that glass to inspiration.
Good.
Stay inspired, guys.